Direct News TV. June 7, 2024. Attacks on US-linked businesses rattle Baghdad as anger over Gaza surges. A dozen masked men jump out of two SUVs and a white pickup and storm a KFC in Baghdad, smashing everything in sight before fleeing the scene. A few days earlier, similar violence played out at Lee's famous Recipe Chicken and Chili House, all US brands popular in the Iraqi capital. Though no one was seriously hurt, the recent attacks, apparently orchestrated by supporters of Iran-backed, anti-US militias in Iraq, reflect surging anger against the United States, Israel's top ally, over the war in Gaza. Iraqi governments have for years walked a delicate line between Washington and Tehran, but the 8-month war in Gaza, which has killed more than 36,000 Palestinians, has critically upped the stakes. Days after the war broke out, a coalition of Iran-backed militias dubbed the Islamic Resistance in Iraq launched dozens of attacks on bases housing American troops in Iraq and eastern Syria. Those attacks stopped in February, but only after a series of retaliatory U.S. strikes following a drone hit on a base in Jordan that killed 3 American soldiers. The attacks on US-linked businesses and brands in Iraq in late May and earlier this week represent a change in tactics intended to maximize anti-US sentiment over Washington's support for Israel. The KFC attack unfolded like a robbery, except the attackers were not after the money. Security camera footage shows the masked men bursting into the fast food restaurant as horrified workers and customers escape through a back exit. The men then proceed to smash windows and LED screens and break chairs, tables, kitchen appliances, and whatever else they could find. Minutes later, security forces arrive at the scene and fire warning shots as perpetrators run back into their cars and speed away. In other incidents, a sound bomb was hurled outside the Caterpillar Company store, rattling the neighborhood and leaving a small pothole in the street. Some of the displays of anti-US sentiment have been less volatile. Protesters carrying Palestinian and Iraqi flags last week marched up to the PepsiCo offices in Baghdad, chanting "No to agents" and "No to Israel." Another protest took place outside the offices of Procter & Gamble. Iraqi forces armed with assault rifles and backed by armored vehicles with mounted machine guns now guard the targeted premises and franchises. Deterring U.S. presence. 2 officials from Iran-backed militias in Iraq confirmed to the Associated Press news agency that the attackers were their supporters and that their goal was to promote a boycott of U.S. brands and deter their presence in the country. It is also an attempt to bolster the militia's image, the officials said, speaking on condition of anonymity in line with their group's regulations. Abu Ali al-Askari, spokesman for the powerful Iran-backed Kataib Hezbollah paramilitary, on Monday urged supporters to get rid of Israel's espionage affiliates covered in civilian garb, a reference to businesses and organizations perceived as linked to the U.S. and Israel. Essa Ahmed, who organized more than 30 protests in support of Gaza, said during a recent Baghdad rally that he and other youth activists want Iraqis to boycott products that support Israel, though he says they do not condone violence. Firebrand Shia leader Muqtada al-Sadr, a rival of the Iran-backed factions who, though retired from politics, is still widely popular among many Iraqi Shias, has called for Iraq to expel the U.S. ambassador. Playground. Political analyst Ihsan al-Shamari sees the targeting of U.S. and Western brands as playing into the decades-old rivalry between Tehran and Washington. These attacks have political goals, he told AP. They send a message that any investment or presence of Western companies in Iraq cannot survive. Renad Mansur, senior research fellow at the Chatham House in London, says Iraq has been a playground for both Washington and Tehran, leaving Baghdad's governments with little sovereignty and agency. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, who came to power with the backing of a pro-Iran coalition, has tried to appease his anti-US allies without stoking tensions with Washington or jeopardizing foreign investments in Iraq. Iraq and the US in recent months began formal talks to draw down some 2,000 US soldiers stationed in Iraq under an agreement with Baghdad, mainly to counter the ISIL group. The Prime Minister of Iraq, has pushed this idea that Iraq is out of war and is focusing on reinitiating the relationship with the US and looking at the relationship with Iran and pushing for Iraq's sovereignty, Mansour told AP. Of course, the war on Gaza has impacted this. Arrests. The Interior Ministry said it arrested some suspects in the rioting and was searching for others. But the two militia figures claimed the government does not dare go after the rioters despite being aware of who they are, fearing an escalation. They warned of more attacks on U.S. interests, should the withdrawal of American troops from Iraq stall further. U.S. Ambassador to Iraq Alina Romanovsky condemned the targeting of U.S. and international franchises in a post on the social media platform X, saying they could impact foreign investment in Iraq's economy. U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said the attacks on what are essentially franchises of U.S. companies harm Iraqi workers, Iraqi patrons, sometimes Iraqi capital that is being employed there. So they are attacks eventually against the Iraqi people, Miller said. We think the Iraqi government ought to take appropriate measures to respond to those attacks and hold people accountable. Iraq's security spokesman Major General Tahsin al-Kaifahi told AP that the rioters will be pursued as will anyone who threatens the country's security and economic well-being. We are making significant efforts to safeguard investments and the progress achieved by the current government, al-Kaifahi said. It is essential to protect these accomplishments and create a safe environment for investors. Still, al-Askari warned security officials not to stand in the way of efforts to take out U.S. interests in Iraq. My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post. You won't regret it.